A brilliant young executive walks into the boardroom with a revolutionary idea that could save the company millions. 6 months later, he's cleaning out his desk, bewildered by his sudden downfall. What happened? He committed the oldest sin in the book of power. He made his boss look small. This is the story of every talented person who crashed and burned not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked wisdom. They forgot the first and most crucial law of power: never outshine the master. Today, we're diving deep into why intelligent people destroy themselves, why loyalty matters more than competence, and how understanding this ancient principle can be the difference between rising to the top and falling into obscurity. If you've ever wondered why less talented people seem to get promoted while brilliant minds get sidelined, this video will change everything you think you know about success. Throughout history, courts have been graveyards for the ambitious. Not because ambition itself is dangerous, but because most people don't understand the delicate psychology of those who hold power. Robert Greene opens his masterwork, The 48 Laws of Power, with this principle for a reason. It's not just a law. It's the foundation upon which all other power dynamics rest. Masters, whether they're CEOs, kings, or team leaders, didn't reach their position by accident. They clawed, schemed, and fought their way to the top. And now, having tasted supremacy, they guard it with the paranoia of a wounded animal. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he wrote The Prince. He observed that rulers are most threatened not by distant enemies, but by those closest to them. The people who know their weaknesses. The people who might eclipse their glory. This law isn't about suppressing your talents. It's about understanding that power is as much about perception as it is about ability. When you make your superior feel inferior, you activate their deepest survival instincts. And in that moment, your competence becomes your greatest liability. Let's travel back to ancient Rome, where ambition and intelligence collided in the most spectacular way possible. Julius Caesar was more than a general. He was a force of nature. Brilliant, charismatic, and utterly dominating. But even Caesar, master of men and conqueror of Gaul, fell victim to this law. Brutus was not Caesar's enemy initially. He was his protege, almost like a son. But as Caesar's power grew, so did his need to be seen as supreme. When Brutus began to gain recognition for his own intellect and noble character, something shifted. Caesar started to see him not as an ally, but as a potential threat to his legacy. The irony. Brutus was never trying to outshine Caesar. But perception, not intention, governs the world of power. Caesar began to feel diminished by Brutus's growing reputation for honor and wisdom. And we all know how that story ended. On the Ides of March, Caesar learned too late that he had created his own assassins by making them feel small in his shadow. Now let's jump forward to more recent history. Steve Jobs, perhaps the most demanding master of the modern era, built Apple into a technological empire. But his graveyard was filled with brilliant minds who made one fatal error. They tried to match his vision instead of enhancing it. Take John Sculley, the former CEO of PepsiCo, whom Jobs recruited with the famous line, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" Sculley was undeniably talented. He had transformed Pepsi into a marketing powerhouse. But when he joined Apple, he made the mistake of trying to be Steve Jobs instead of being the perfect complement to Steve Jobs. Sculley started pushing his own vision for Apple's future. He wanted to make the company more corporate, more traditional. In doing so, he didn't just disagree with Jobs. He made Jobs feel like his revolutionary approach was being questioned, diminished, and ultimately replaced. The result? A boardroom coup that saw Jobs himself ejected from the company he had built. But here's the twist that proves our law: Sculley's victory was Pyrrhic. Without Jobs, Apple began to stagnate. And when Jobs returned years later, one of his first acts was to orchestrate Sculley's removal. The student had tried to become the master, and ultimately, both nearly destroyed the kingdom they were fighting over. But perhaps no story illustrates this law better than the rise and fall of Napoleon's marshals. Take Marshal Michel Ney, known as the bravest of the brave. Ney was instrumental in Napoleon's victories across Europe. His courage was legendary, his tactical mind sharp. But as Napoleon's empire grew, so did Ney's confidence in his own abilities. During the Russian campaign, Ney began to question Napoleon's decisions openly. Not out of disloyalty, but out of genuine concern for their army. He started to believe that his experience and wisdom could guide the emperor better than the emperor could guide himself. Napoleon, who had spent years cultivating an image of infallibility, could not tolerate this challenge to his supreme judgment. Even though Ney's concerns were often valid, even though his loyalty was never in question, Napoleon began to distance himself from his most capable marshal. The tragic irony came during Napoleon's final campaign at Waterloo. Ney was there, still fighting for his emperor, but the trust between them had been broken. Napoleon hesitated to give Ney full command when it mattered most, and that hesitation contributed to their defeat. After Napoleon's fall, Ney was executed by the restored monarchy. The men who had served his master faithfully for decades died because he had forgotten that masters need to feel supreme, even when they make mistakes. To understand why this law is so powerful, we must examine the mind of those who hold power. Masters are not typically secure, confident individuals who welcome challenge and growth. If they were, they might never have fought so hard to reach the top in the first place. Most people in positions of authority carry within them the wounds of every struggle it took to get there. They remember being overlooked, underestimated, and challenged. They remember the fear of losing, the humiliation of being second best. When someone beneath them displays exceptional talent, it triggers a primal response. Suddenly, they're not seeing a valuable team member. They're seeing their younger self, hungry and capable, ready to take their place. This fear is rarely rational. A brilliant subordinate usually strengthens a leader's position rather than threatens it. But fear is not rational. Fear operates on instinct, and instinct tells the master that anyone who can outshine them today might overthrow them tomorrow. Consider the psychology of insecurity. Masters often project an image of supreme confidence, but this image frequently masks deep uncertainty. They know, better than anyone, how they truly gained their position. They know their weaknesses, their limitations, their mistakes. When a subordinate excels, it highlights these insecurities. It forces the master to confront the possibility that they might not be as irreplaceable as they've convinced themselves they are. This is why perception matters more than intention. You might have no desire to challenge your superior. You might be completely loyal, devoted to their success. But if your abilities make them feel diminished, your loyalty becomes irrelevant. In our contemporary world, this ancient law still claims victims daily. The settings have changed, but human nature remains constant. In corporate environments, I've watched countless talented individuals sabotage their careers without realizing it. There's the marketing manager who presents such innovative campaigns that the CMO starts to feel outdated. There's the software developer whose elegant code makes the lead programmer look clumsy by comparison. These people aren't trying to threaten anyone. They're simply excelling at their jobs. But excellence, without wisdom, becomes a weapon pointed at your own future. Social media has created new ways to violate this law. How many young entrepreneurs have I seen posting about their successes, their innovative ideas, their rapid growth, only to find themselves suddenly cut off from mentors and industry connections? They thought they were sharing their wins. What they were actually doing was broadcasting to their superiors that they no longer needed guidance, that they had perhaps surpassed those who helped them rise. In families, this dynamic plays out in heartbreaking ways. The child who excels academically in a household where the parents never finished school. The entrepreneur whose business success makes their traditional parents feel like their life choices were wrong. Even in friendships, this law operates silently. The friend who gets promoted while others struggle. The one whose relationship thrives while others face loneliness. Without careful navigation, success can become isolation. The mistake most people make is assuming that others will celebrate their victories. They project their own generous nature onto the world and are shocked when excellence breeds resentment instead of admiration. So how does one navigate this minefield? How do you excel without threatening? How do you rise without creating enemies? The answer lies in understanding that power is a game of perception, and in this game, making others feel powerful is more valuable than appearing powerful yourself. First, learn the art of reflected glory. Instead of presenting your ideas as your own innovations, frame them as extensions of your superior's wisdom. Building on your insight about market trends, I've developed some additional research that supports your vision. This approach does two crucial things. It gives your master credit for the foundation of your idea, making them feel like the originator. And it positions you as someone who enhances their brilliance rather than competes with it. When you achieve success, immediately deflect credit upward. This victory wouldn't have been possible without your guidance. Your strategy was so sound that executing it became straightforward. This isn't false modesty. This is strategic intelligence. You're not diminishing your abilities. You're investing in your future by making your superior feel invested in your success. Timing is everything. There are moments when you can shine brightly, and moments when you must step back into shadow. Learn to read the room, to sense when your master needs to be the center of attention. In public settings, especially, never upstage your superior. If you must correct them, do it privately, gently, and in a way that allows them to make the correction appear as their own realization. Master the art of the strategic question. Instead of stating, "You're wrong about the market analysis," try, "I'm curious about your thoughts on the Q3 data that seems to suggest a different trend. How do you think we should interpret that?" This approach lets them discover the error themselves and even take credit for the correction. You've provided value while preserving their ego. True mastery of this law requires understanding that power is not seized in dramatic moments. It's accumulated grain by grain, through consistent demonstration of loyalty, competence, and wisdom. Make yourself indispensable, but never irreplaceable. This is a delicate balance. You want to be valued for your unique contributions, but you never want your master to feel that you're the only one who can do what you do. Build your reputation slowly and carefully. Let others discover your talents organically rather than announcing them. When someone else praises your work in front of your superior, it carries more weight than self-promotion ever could. Create situations where your master can take credit for your development. Working under your mentorship has really helped me grow in this area. This makes them feel responsible for your success, which makes your success feel like their success. Develop expertise in areas that complement rather than compete with your master's strengths. If they're visionary, become excellent at execution. If they're strategic, master operational details. Most importantly, learn to read the deeper currents of your master's psychology. What are they insecure about? What are they most proud of? What threats keep them awake at night? Once you understand these deeper motivations, you can position yourself as a solution to their fears rather than an addition to them. Remember, the goal is not to remain permanently subordinate. The goal is to rise so gradually, so carefully, that by the time you're ready to step into greater power, your former master feels like they're handing you the crown rather than having it taken from them. The highest expression of this law is not just avoiding the master's displeasure, but actively cultivating their dependence on you. When you master this principle, you transform from a potential threat into an essential asset. Study how the most successful advisors throughout history operated. They made themselves so valuable to their masters that harming them would be self-destructive. Take Cardinal Richelieu, who served under Louis XIII of France. Richelieu was undoubtedly more intelligent, more strategic, and more politically savvy than his king. In many ways, he was the real power behind the throne. But he never let Louis feel diminished by this reality. Instead, Richelieu framed every decision, every victory, every strategic success as a reflection of the king's wisdom and authority. He positioned himself as the perfect instrument of royal will rather than an independent power. The result? Louis became completely dependent on Richelieu's counsel. Removing him would have meant admitting that the king couldn't govern effectively alone. Richelieu had made himself not just useful, but essential to the king's self-image. This is the ultimate goal, to become so aligned with your master's success that your advancement becomes their advancement. In modern terms, this might mean becoming the person who makes your boss look brilliant in board meetings. The one who anticipates their needs before they express them. The one who handles problems so smoothly that your superior appears effortlessly competent. You're not hiding your light under a bushel. You're focusing that light to illuminate your master's path to greater glory. ## when the master falls, positioning for succession. Of course, masters are mortal. Companies change leadership. Political winds shift. And when they do, those who have mastered this law find themselves in the best position to inherit power. Because you've been the loyal lieutenant, because you've made yourself indispensable, because you've never threatened the existing order, you become the natural choice for succession. Others might have more obvious talent, but you have something more valuable, the trust of the power structure. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple after his exile, he didn't bring back the people who had tried to outshine him. He brought back those who had supported his vision while adding their own quiet competence to it. When Napoleon fell, it wasn't his most brilliant generals who found new positions of power. It was those who had served loyally without challenging his supremacy who were welcomed by the new regime. This is the long game of power. While others are focused on immediate recognition, you're building the foundation for ultimate authority. Here lies the beautiful paradox of this law: by appearing weaker, you become stronger. By stepping back, you position yourself to step forward when the moment is right. This requires a particular kind of confidence. You must be secure enough in your abilities that you don't need constant validation. You must be patient enough to wait for your moment. You must be wise enough to see that true power often operates in shadow. Think of this as the difference between a thunderstorm and a river. The thunderstorm is dramatic, impossible to ignore, briefly powerful. But it passes quickly and leaves little lasting change. The river is quiet, seemingly gentle, barely noticeable day by day. But over time, it carves grand canyons and shapes entire landscapes. Which force would you rather be? Some might argue that this approach is manipulative, that it requires suppressing your authentic self for political gain. But I would suggest a different perspective. This law is really about emotional intelligence and social awareness. It's about understanding that human beings are complex creatures driven by ego, fear, and pride as much as by logic and fairness. When you honor these psychological realities, you're not being manipulative. You're being wise. You're creating an environment where everyone can succeed without feeling threatened. Moreover, by mastering this principle, you often enable your superior to be their best self. When they feel secure and valued, they're more likely to make good decisions, to be generous with opportunities, to create a positive environment for everyone. Your strategic patience becomes a gift to the entire organization or relationship. One of the most crucial skills in applying this law is learning to read the subtle signs that you might be crossing the line. Watch for changes in how your master interacts with you. Do they seem less interested in your opinions? Are they excluding you from meetings you used to attend? Do they seem to focus more on your mistakes than your successes? These might be early warnings that you've inadvertently triggered their insecurity. Pay attention to their body language when you speak in groups. Do they tense up when you start talking? Do they interrupt you more frequently? Do they seem to compete with your ideas rather than build on them? Listen to how they talk about your contributions. If they start minimizing your role in successes or emphasizing your role in failures, you may need to recalibrate your approach. The key is to catch these signals early, before the damage becomes irreversible. This law operates across all cultures, though its expression varies. In hierarchical societies like Japan or Korea, it's more explicitly understood. Everyone knows their place, and maintaining harmony within that structure is valued above individual achievement. In more egalitarian cultures, the law operates more subtly but just as powerfully. American corporate culture supposedly values merit and innovation, but countless talented individuals have discovered that merit without political wisdom leads nowhere. Understanding cultural context helps you calibrate your approach. What might be seen as appropriate confidence in one setting could be viewed as threatening arrogance in another. Our digital age has created new ways to violate this law without realizing it. Social media makes it easier than ever to inadvertently outshine your superiors. That LinkedIn post celebrating your promotion might make your former manager feel left behind. Power does not destroy, ego does.